Okay, thank you for inviting me here to speak. And contrary to what Rob Williams wants, I'm not going to mention rugby. Sure, don't worry. You did better than us, sinner. Right, well, I want to send greetings from all of us in Ireland, and I'm proud to say that we stand here in close solidarity with yourselves in the CWI and for the values that you've upheld since 1974 and way beyond that. So it's a proud tradition, and it's proud that I am to speak to you. Northern Ireland is a very divided society. You probably know that without me saying, but it's also a society that's only really exiting conflict, so it's nowhere near where it needs to be. When we're young, we're divided. When we're old, we're divided. Every single facet of life, housing, schools, churches, sports, everything is divided. They have walls that's getting higher in the big cities, the peace walls, but they even put walls between you when you die in the cemeteries. That's the reality of what's happened. But there's one place where workers are not divided, and that's the workplaces. The one place where Protestants and Catholics come together day and daily, and they socialize, and they get on, and they live, and do all the things that normal people do. And because of that, they also unified in the trade union movement. So it is natural that if you really want to change Northern Ireland's situation, you're going to have to build on the politics of the trade union movement, on the politics of the labour movement, and on the politics of socialism. Socialism is traditionally, and labour politics has traditionally been the real opposition in Northern Ireland. From the very establishment of the North, the carnival of reaction, as James Connolly called it, North and South, with partition, the Labour Party was the opposition. And it was much more feared by the unionist establishment than any other organisation. They didn't fear the nationalists on the side beyond them. They didn't mind them because they were capable of withstanding that. But what they couldn't withstand was the unity of workers and the inspiration that was derived from the international socialist movement. Like many other people my age, I grew up in a really rough upbringing, and I grew up a lot of hate, and I joined Sinn Féin to try and change things. I became a Marxist very young. I was inspired by Malcolm X, reading his works, and I joined Sinn Féin with that as an inspiration, and it wouldn't take you too long to work out that you'd find that you'd need to change a lot of things to actually fulfill that sort of aspiration. But I spent 12 years in the organisation before I finally gave up on it. I was a councillor and I resigned my seat. I was won over by Peter Haddon and one of the Mulhearns, who always seemed to take the leadership in Ireland. But they won me on the basis of a revolutionary party. They won me on the basis that they weren't scared to talk about socialism. They won me on the basis of the unification of the working class and the need to build a real militant movement grounded in the trade union movement, grounded in the politics of the socialist movement going back the decades. And I took particular inspiration in the politics of the CWI, and I tried to put it in action, even though I lived 100 miles away from Belfast and 110 miles from Dublin. I was 10 years in the organisation, and I built a support base of people in the union movement. I became the secretary of the Trades Council. We built a movement in Fermanagh that defeated the very first instance of fracking. We built a mass movement that mobilised. It was in my own village. They said that they put the fracking in my village because they said if they could prove if we couldn't defeat it there, that we would defeat it nowhere. And that's why they put it in my own village. But they were sorry they put it in my village. And we did defeat them. They also, by the way, they didn't announce that the new application for fracking was to go in until the very day of the local election. It's actually in black and white. They didn't say why it was, but that was another compliment about the sort of movement that they're scared of unleashing. We also built a very strong movement attracting thousands of people in our county town in Enniskillen to defend local NHS services, and virtually every aspect, every week goes by, we're not in a local press. And we built a movement on that basis, rooted in the trade unions, and translated it into, eventually, I stood as a Socialist Party councillor, I stood as a Fermanagh against fracking councillor, and I stood eventually as a cross-community Labour councillor, and we got elected in the third time. And it is a historic moment because it's a validation of the politics of the CWI. It's a validation of the politics that says you can transcend division, you can sublate national politics, you can unite working class people, you can defeat imperialism, you can defeat nationalism and the reaction of it by working class people coming together. And that was achieved by this politics of this movement. I want to say it's very vital, and it's important that you understand how vital what the work you do is for us. People like me come from a background where it's quite difficult sometimes to say, you know, not all British people are wrong, and it's quite difficult to reach across into the other side of the community. But seeing a real militant socialist movement gives hope to us in that fight, and it's vital. Every step you go forward is important to us. And Jeremy Corbyn did inspire people. Despite many failings, I'm sure we could enumerate them, despite his attitude towards Sinn Féin in particular, he even got Protestants inspired with the politics of socialism. 3,000 people joined the Labour Party of Northern Ireland, a party that is never going to be allowed to stand because they are inspired by that politics. That's the politics of hope. It's the politics of socialism. It's the politics that you, more than anyone else as an organisation, have showed a lead on for so many years. We're 1,020 days or something like that without a functioning government in Northern Ireland. We're really in a lot of crisis. We've got a health service falling apart, worse than nearly anywhere else, I think, in the UK. Lowest pay rates for the NHS workers anywhere in the NHS. We have a manufacturing crisis. We've got the border poll, which is basically a poll of coercion, offering nothing but a capitalist United Ireland on one hand and partition on the other, under capitalism on the other. That's no hope for anyone. That offers no way forward. We've a rise in tension from demographic change. We've the Brexit situation, a strike of capital. And you've got imperialist blocs on either side playing politics with that, to the extent that we've had car bombs, we've had to mobilize in the streets, sometimes in small numbers, trade unionists showing leadership when there's no one else there to say, no going back. We're the people in lead of that. The killing of Lyra McKee, we were the first people, our comrades, the CWI comrades. We were the people who organized the rallies that opposed that. We do this. They've done it all the way back. 1969, there were CWI or pre-CWI people there. 1970, in the 70s, it was our activists out there trying to stop the descent into civil war, which was on the cards. It's real. It's always implicit in a situation where you have such divisions. Unless you get leadership from the trade union movement, unless you get a Labour alternative, unless you get cross-community socialist politics, it will always eventually go back to that, and the parties will always take it back to that because that's the position of strength that they can rely upon. But their votes have decreased for the last 5 elections. Their power to divide the working class, it's actually not as strong as it was. The DUP propping up the Tory party. Sinn Féin pushing PFI, Sinn Féin pushing a 12% corporation tax rate. These things have broken the link. Sinn Féin and the DUP voting to implement Tory universal credit, where they didn't have the power to do so without it. This is the reality that's out there. And the trade union movement, in the absence of anything else, it's the trade unions who have stepped up to the plate. I'm active in Unite, and NIPSA, the largest trade union. We have built up strength in these unions. They're now leading the fight back. 20,000 public sector workers have been on strike in the last month, on and off. That's under NIPSA. Unite has had a 10-week occupation of the shipyard and a titanic struggle. We had the Right Bus, biggest rally in the history of Ballymena. I think it's for 52 years, cross-community Labour rally. I was proud to be on that. And I want to send a particular shout out to the meat packers in Lurgan, who are this Monday going to go out in a real vicious strike. It's going to be because there's a billionaire beef baron by the name of Larry Goodman. I don't know if any of you have any memory of Irish politics going back into the 80s and 90s, but he was in the beef tribunal, and they're facing up to this guy who said, we just faced down the Irish farmers, we're not going to worry about a trade union. But they're going out on Monday, and it's the start of a real fight there. It's going to be a hard one. So there is a possibility of a trade union, a Labour alternative coming forward, a real socialist politics in the middle of that. It's not certain that we have to face conflict. It's not certain that we have to face the possibility of a vicious, brutal civil war and a repartition, which is possibly what you could see happening in the worst-case scenario. So that's not a possibility. That does not have to be our future. There's a hope for a progressive alternative, and that hope is lit up by the CWI. It's the politics of the CWI that lights up that future. We stand against individual terrorism. We stand against state repression. We stand against sectarian division. We stand against coercion of a minority who happen to lose, whichever side it is, the border poll. We stand for a socialist Ireland and a socialist federation of England, Scotland and Wales, and a socialist Europe and a socialist world, like Peter said. And it isn't a utopia. It's the only way forward. And we stand in solidarity, comrades, and we'll be on the path to victory. Good luck, comrades.